Okay, and what I want to do in this video is give an introduction into the idea of what national income is. Okay, so this is exactly what we're studying, the concept of national income. And I think really what I have to make evident or obvious to you guys is that so many people understand that national income is important. And if national income goes up, that's good. And if national income goes down, that's bad. But a lot of people, particularly depending on what they may have studied in previous years, how much business or economics they'd been exposed to, a lot of people have absolutely no idea really what national income is. So this is the real attempt now. This video and the subsequent few videos that follow is the real attempt to really explain exactly what national income is and how to calculate it. Now, what we are doing right now is starting our study of macroeconomics as a whole, right? So what macroeconomics is the study of the economy as a whole. Now, these kind of guys that I have on the right-hand side, this is a guy called Konstantin Gurdjieff. This is a guy that actually lectured me in University College Dublin, Morgan Kelly, and there's another guy called Nouriel Roubini. And these people wrote extensively on the 2007 crash that occurred around the world. And this is massively important when we talk about macroeconomics. And now I'm recording this during the time of COVID. So, I mean, it's very, very interesting to see the effects of the horrible effects on people's lives and on the economy at the same time. So one thing that we're really, as I said already, we're looking at is this idea of national income. So the first thing you really need to know is what's the definition of national income. Now, you hear the word income and you think money, and I can understand that. And I'm here to try to explain and convince you that your understanding of economics in general, particularly macroeconomics and international and development economics and all these kind of things, will be immeasurably helped if you can think about wealth in terms of production. Okay, so the definition that I'm going to give you, and it's not just mine, it's everyone, very well accepted definition, but is national income is the total value of all goods and services produced in a country during a specified period of time, usually a year. Now you can see up here, right, this letter Y. In economics, Y stands for income. So you would have studied this at this stage, YED, okay? That stands for income elasticity of demand, all right? So it's in economics. Just think, when you're thinking of income, either national income or a person's income, think of the letter Y. Now, a couple of things. Now, this is no official rule in terms of the IB, but this is kind of my rule. And again, I think if you can start to think about economics in this way as an entire economy, well, then you will be better off. The wealth of a nation, Macroeconomics Rule 1, the wealth of a nation depends only on the quantity and quality of goods and services it produces. The more goods and services that a country produces, the richer that the citizens of that country are in general on average. The more that is produced, the more that is consumed. Now, this is why I want you to try to change your thinking. And I will have another slide in a second to better illustrate that, is that what do you want money for? So people think money makes you rich. And then the question becomes, and if you've watched the previous videos on money and wealth, you should know this already, but it's okay if you don't, but really try to understand this. What do you want money for? You want more money because you can afford to buy more stuff. If you have a higher fraction of the existing money supply, the amount of goods and services that you can buy invariably rises. So what do you want money for? In order to buy stuff, okay, goods and services. Okay, well, I think you will agree that you cannot buy anything if nothing is produced. And that's what I want you to think. Output equals wealth. Production equals wealth in macroeconomics. Please, please, please keep that in mind. Okay, that's the first rule. Production equals wealth, because the more that is produced, the more that can be consumed. Now, I've said all of this, okay? So the more goods and services that are produced in a society, an economy, a country, the higher the standard of living for that residents of that country. Now, what do I mean by standard of living? Well, you can afford to buy more stuff. Okay, this is a material standard of living. Okay, now this is the kind of the example that you would have seen in the previous videos on money and wealth. So we have this individual, he's on a desert island, okay, and he's completely alone. All right. So how does he increase his standard of living? How does he make his life better on a day-to-day basis? All right. Well, materially, we can't say, well, like, a very obvious one would be like help him to get home, right? But we're saying that materially in this situation, how can he improve his standard of living, his quality of life, how good or how rich his life is? Well, the first thing that you can do is eat well. So let's just say that imagine he finds a cow or a group of cattle on the island and he manages to kill one of them. I'm sorry, vegans, I'm sorry. But he does, okay? Well then, and he cooks it. Right, well, let's just think about this. All right, so the idea of him slaughtering the cow and carving up the meat, that is a process. That is a production process. He is taking a live animal and turning it into food. Okay, so he has produced this steak here, granted with the help of nature, because he didn't produce the cow, but he produced this steak from using land around him, the factors of production around him. Now, also, he must have produced a grill in some way. Obviously, you have to suspend disbelief. I'm sorry about that. But the idea is that this grill was the end result of a production process. This steak, before it was cooked, was the end result of a production process, i.e. his own, granted, but still he produced it. And then when he cooks it, he's also engaging in cookery or culinary delights. So that is a production process in and of itself. His life is better, at least according to his preferences, after having eaten the steak and being able to eat more steak. Why? Because of production. Now again, this is obviously a stupid example. I'm just doing this to kind of illustrate a point. Let's imagine that he somehow builds a car, which is obviously really, really, really difficult and nigh on impossible, but still suspend disbelief. Well, is his life better? And the idea is, yes, if he can travel to other further destinations on the island, he can gather water further away, he can go to different places and see maybe some of the nice scenery. He has the ability to enjoy a higher standard of living because of the end result of his own production. Okay, now the last one is, imagine if he builds himself a house, and obviously I chose a stupidly lavish house that he could not really in all reality build, but why not? So he manages to build himself a house. Is he better off? And the answer is yes. His standard of living is higher. He is warm during the winter and relatively cooler during the summer. He's out of the hot sun. Okay, so is his life better? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. And why is that? Production here, production there, and production there. Okay, so I understand that a lot of you that may be watching this video for the first time are like, yeah, but money makes you rich. And I'm like, okay, owning or having access to a higher fraction of the existing money supply makes you rich. Yes, it does. Watch the previous videos in this playlist. If you don't understand that, that's fine. Just make sure to go back and watch Money and Wealth. Okay, but if you think about it, let's say now we just printed a load of money and gave it to him. We dropped it off on the island and said, there you go, mate, we'll be back in a year to rescue you, but don't worry, you've got loads of money. Well, what can he use that money to buy? And the answer is nothing. Okay? Let's say if we take away all of the production and instead gave him the money, I think you would agree that his life was better with the production and without the money than it would be with the money and without the production. Okay, all money is used to do is exchange between people, is used as a medium of exchange between people for the goods and services that they have produced. Production is wealth. Now, why am I saying this about this guy on a desert island? Well, what is true for him is also true for everybody else in the economy. Excuse me, the more that is produced, the more that can be consumed by everybody. And that's why in macroeconomics, printing more money does not make a country rich. Having a higher fraction of the existing money supply is what makes a person rich. But printing more money in general certainly does not make a country rich. Production does. Okay, I've said that. Now, I'm just going to go quickly through this slide. So the idea is that national income can be used, particularly when we look at this idea, which we will in later videos, of GDP per capita or GNI per capita. Do not worry if you don't know what those mean. I promise you we'll go through them at great detail in later videos. But it's an average when we do that. Now, I guarantee you that there is always going to be a disparity between the haves and the have-nots. There will always be income inequality, particularly in a capitalist society. Okay, so what we're saying saying is we could add up all of the income, and you're saying, hold on a sec, John, I thought that output, production was wealth. And I'll say, okay, we could add up the value of all of these people's production who live in rather splendid luxury, and all the value of all of these people's production who unfortunately seem to live in a rather Spartan conditions, and we could get an average between the two. And that average of these very few could be higher, the average of everybody together could be higher than all of these people living there. Okay, and the reason is because these are so much higher. The value of production or output from all of these people is way higher than all of these people. So the average is skewed. So, and then I said in another way, it attempts to be a measure, not of happiness per se, I suppose, but more of economic well-being. Okay, now, this is Biggie Smalls. Why am I putting a photograph of him? Right, this is the whole point. This is something that I could never really get my head around. So an economy is absolutely huge, okay, but it is not infinite. So you look at this economy, you look at all these people, look at all these factors of production that exist around here, and you're saying, well, there's no limit to what an economy can produce. That is what I thought, and I was wrong. Okay, so what I'm saying to you is there is a limit, because if you think about it, what produces the goods and services that you and I consume and enjoy consuming? Well, it is the factors of production: land, labour, capital and enterprise. And I sincerely hope that you would accept that those are limited. There is a limited amount of land, planet Earth. There is a limited amount of labour, the population of the planet. There is a limited amount of capital, which is all machines and warehouses and buildings and factories and all that kind of stuff. And there's a limited amount of good ideas, which is enterprise. So there really is. Now, there doesn't have to be, but there seems to be. That's probably the closest to infinity, that factor of production of good ideas. But still, there are these things that are used to produce the goods and services that you and I enjoy are limited. If they are limited, that means that production must be limited. Okay? Now, it can always increase year on year. You can always build more machines. You can always have better ideas. You can always develop new technology. But currently, at any one point in time, the amount of output that can be produced in an economy is limited. And if there is a limit, that means that we can calculate the total amount and value of all production. Don't forget about the definition of national income. The total value of all goods and services produced in an economy over a specified period of time, usually a year. So what I'm saying is it is possible to calculate the value of all output. No economy, no matter how big, whether it's China, whether it's the USA or the European Union, no economy can produce infinite amount. There is a limit on what we can produce at any one period in time, and therefore there is a limit on what we can consume. So again, we are trying to get to one single number, which is the correct and absolute value of everything that was produced in an economy over a year. We're trying to get national income, which is the value of all goods and services produced in an economy over a specified period of time, usually a year. And we're trying to get that down to one single number. So if we get it down to one single number, well, then we can compare years, we can compare countries, we can show growth rates, we can do all of this kind of stuff. So in order to calculate national income, in order to calculate GDP and GNI and all these kind of things, well, there's two things we need to know. We need to know how much of each individual good was produced. Now look, it depends on the size of the country that you're in. If you're in America, there's probably like 1 million goods being produced every year, and you're like saying, how do people calculate it? And I'm saying it's a big job, yes, but it is still possible. People in Ireland, where I am from, there's an organisation called the Central Statistics Office, and it's their job, one of their jobs is to calculate national income. So what they have to do is go around, essentially get tax filings from every single company and find out what was produced and what they sold it at, what price they sold it at. And that brings me on to the second thing, which is we need to know the value of each of these goods. So we need to know how many of each good was produced and what is the value of each good. Right, well, in order to find out the first thing, which is how many of each good is produced, we can just simply count them. Now, the office in charge of calculating national income doesn't do that. It relies on tax forms and tax receipts and all this kind of stuff, okay, from firms that they have to send to the tax office. But, it's done for them. And then the second way is the value of each good that is produced is its market price. price. It is the price that it is sold at. So we need to know how many of each type of good that is produced. And I'm literally saying like the most minute detail, like how many G.I. Joes with the Kung Fu grip did you sell? Okay, now how many G.I. Joes Jungle Warrior did you sell? Like exactly that. And what was the price of each of those? And then you're going to say, okay, well, how many Ben and Jerry's ice cream, chocolate ice cream was sold? Like it is literally as specific as it can be. And then you have to add in the price into that calculation. So what I would ask you to do now at the end of the first video is to pause it now, have a go at these questions. When you have these questions answered, or even in your mind, okay, then press play and see if you understand it. Okay, well, again, I hope that you've had a chance to do that. Okay, so the first question, what is macroeconomics? Macroeconomics is the study of the economy as a whole. Right, it looks at the entirety of the economy, not a single household or a single person or a single firm or a single industry. It looks at everything in the economy at the one time. What is national income? National income is the total value of all goods and services produced in a country during a specified period of time, usually a year. Remember, it's about production. We can only consume what is produced, and our standard of living is based on what we can consume. The reason that people want high-paying jobs is because it allows them to consume more, but those high-paying jobs would be worthless if nothing was produced, and hence a job is production. What defines how rich we are as a country? The quality and quantity of goods and services produced. Excuse me, sometimes I get ahead of myself. What is the measure of value in economics? Well, the value of a good is its market price, its selling price, what it sells for. What is the symbol used for national income in economics? Why? It's simply the symbol for income in general. And what does national income tell us about the economy? The value that we get when calculating national income, which we will be doing in the next video, tells us the standard of living that can be enjoyed in that country. Now, I really hope that this was clear. I hope that this makes sense. Maybe you might be better off rewatching this video or rewatching it and then going on to the calculations, because I believe in the next video when we go into the calculations, this could make a lot more sense. And I hope this was helpful, and thanks very much for watching.